Hey, this is Ben.
And Nora.
Welcome back to the Midwest Model Shop.
We just wanted to take this time to thank everyone for supporting the channel throughout the year, for subscribing and liking all of the comments, supporting the shop.
Yes, our website.
Supporting the website, yep, and Patreon as well.
Yes, we do. We do appreciate everyone, especially the new Patreon contributors. Super grateful for all of that, and you guys have made this a really good experience, I think, for both of us, right? So,
Yes.
with that being said, in today's episode, we're going to go ahead and show you how to put together the ship's davits using the KA kits, and we're going to go ahead and assemble one of KA's lifeboats, one of the 30-foot boats, and get that assembled with all of the rigging. And yeah, that should just about take care of it. We hope everyone has a great Happy New Year if we don't see you again for the new year, right?
Hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season. Be safe.
Be safe and stay warm out there. And yeah, that's it. Let's get into the build. All right, so starting out here, we're looking at the KA instructions for the davits, and this is on page 8. And it's pretty simple. You just, you have your photo etch parts, and you have your base, and then you have the davit yourself. The issue is getting the angle of the davits correct, if you will. Notice that this is the one that's going up and down is actually not straight up and down, and the one leaning out goes off to the right. And then you need to get them all to match each other going across. But fortunately, there is good news. And so let's go ahead and take a look up here. I'm interested in number 34, which requires Y38 and 14. We'll worry about R29 later. So get your photo etch pieces out and check this out. They actually are to scale so that you can go ahead and place them at the correct angle looking down on top of each other. Another point I will make real quickly while we're here, because we're looking at it, if you look at Y14, there's these little triangles on here, and the one on the right, this direction is actually slightly smaller than the one on the left. I don't know why, and it is depicted that way in the instructions. I don't think you'll run into trouble if you get them backwards, but it is worth getting correct since you know about it. So let's see if we can't go ahead and do this. Alright, so this is going to require a large degree of eyeballing on all of your parts, but grab a little bit of the CA glue, place your piece on here, and get an eyeball shot of where the glue should go. And I put a little on the corner here and then some down at the base where the gear's at. Kind of a pro tip here, if you can, use CA glue, or just don't get too carried away with your glue initially here, so that not only can you double check your work, you can get the angle adjusted. So that looks pretty good. Actually, that looks spot on. I'm going to leave it right there where it's at. But if you run into trouble, you can take your piece, and if you can manage to leave it glued in at the bottom, you can actually pop it away at the top here and adjust your angle in and out a little bit. So once you're done and you've got the first one started, you're on your way. I mean, that's it. That's all there is to it. But you do want to check that they're straight, and you do want to check their angle up against one another. Alright, and when you're done, you should have something that looks like this. I've lined them all up to that grid line right there so that they're straight, and we'll try and zoom in a little bit more here. As you can see, the tops of the davits, they're almost touching one another, and the idea there is that they're lined up at the right angle so that hopefully they make a lot of sense. If you don't get this perfect, it's going to be fine. I don't think mechanically they were the same. I think you could have one not line up with the other, but the tools are there to try and get it straight, and that's what you want to do. So now that this is all said and done, I'm going to go ahead and prime everything with my Mr. Metal primer. and then they'll get hit with their white. I like to use the liquid surface white by Tamiya also and get them white, and then we'll get them painted up. Make sure you prep all the appropriate photo etch too for the next step. Press it on. Alright, so we've got our parts painted up, and now we're looking at the deck. So this is our, KA deck, and it's meant to work with the kit parts, which is why you have this big area right here opened up. So a couple of things you could do. You could go ahead and just paint this. You could fill it in with a piece of wood, but I'm not too worried about that. We're going to handle it basically like we did this lifeboat up here. We'll go ahead and put a little piece of supporting styrene on the photo etch that will drop in here, and you'll be set. Now what's worth noting is we have this little dot here. You can see there's two more here. And then as we move down the ship, can I zoom in more? Yes, you've got two more here. Centered on these lines is where your davits go. And I've already monkeyed around with it to figure this out, that yes, it will work out just fine for you. And so what we'll do, though, is justify or make sure that the edge of all the davits end up in the same place. And so what I've elected to do is, you've got your waterway right here. I'm going to butt it right up flush to that point, just like that. The reason is you have your two that go right up here for this davit. It's for the what you call it, the little 26, 25 foot emergency boat that's always going to be out over the side. So you have these set. Then we will worry about our photo etch pieces that go into place. So let's go ahead and start gluing these in. Alright, so it's just a touch of CA on the back here. Bring it all the way up to the waterway. Get it centered on your dots. And set it down. And you're good to go. Now this is important that we have it in and out right and straight for the next davit. So in this instance, my client has opted to have his boats out, the two up front here, your little emergency boats. This is actually required by maritime law back then while your ships were underway, in case you ran into anyone in trouble. So those are set. So again, we're checking that it's parallel, well, perpendicular to the deck line and parallel to one another, so that we can pretend to have our lifeboat sitting in the right spot. Okay, and this one is kind of unique because it butts up to the railing right behind it. But again, same thing, and make sure, just kind of double check that you got them going straight up and down as best as you can right here. All right, here we go. Now, you could put the photo etch parts in first. The drop in here will address those next. But these are painted up, and because of the position of the railing that's got to go in, there's photo etch railing. For some reason, they didn't want people messing around with the lifeboats. I don't know why. I guess they didn't know what was coming. But anyway, you got to put this railing in position. So then we have our last one up here on the bow. So it drops in just like that, and we are good to go. Okay? And yes, the pulleys go to the back side inboard, because we're going to be putting some little davits, or bits, down there that would have been, some rigging would run around here, and then it could go up to this pulley and up to the top of the davit to lower your ship. I don't think they had to go, the pulleys had to go here. The ropes didn't have to go onto the pulley to lower it. They could be lowered by hand, is what the book said, but you definitely needed a winch to pull them back up. Not a big deal in this, Titanic's case, but a deal. And so, yeah, we'll worry about the rigging, I think, later on here. But anyway, that is your initial placement here of our bow davits, and they look cool. We're painting in from above. So now what we want to do is focus on these spots right here. This is where the bottoms, the little racks to hold your lifeboats in place go, and so we have a little process for that. All right, as we move along, the next thing is the little stanchions or photo etch pieces that are going to hold your lifeboats up. So paint them, cut them out, and get them folded up and they're ready to go. You'll notice though that there's nothing on the back and that they are paper thin. And I've talked about this in the couple videos back. So what we're going to do is take this little piece of styrene and make ourselves a little backer. We're just going to eyeball the length, cut it, and then you've got a little piece like so. And what I do is get yourself your toothpick, grab a little CA glue, and dash it along on here. Like that. Grab your little styrene and put it on here like this. Now, this does a couple of things. One, it gives you a better surface to glue to on the deck of the ship. You're not trying to take a piece of razor thin photo etch. It stands up by itself already. And the other thing it does is it'll fill in the gap that we have up on the deck from the Scale Decks kit. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so there's our spot where this goes, and now you could go ahead and put it right in the edge, fill the gap up nicely. You know exactly where your piece goes. Check that it's up and down and get it perpendicular to deck. Make sure it comes right up to the waterway, and that will take care of the installation of your piece. And as you can see, I've gone ahead and installed the other ones already, and that works out nicely. The next issue though is this one. Where does this one go? So the spacing is here for all of the other ones. The problem is Scale Decks put in the expanded deck joint right here, and it eliminated the marking for that little stanchion. So what I did is I measured the distance from here to here and from here to here, because these boats are 30 feet long, are the same length, and the answer is right in the middle of the expanded deck joint is where this piece goes. Now, right or wrong, that's the spacing, and it works out nicely if it's installed right here. Now, I realize it's right over the deck joint, but remember, a 30-foot boat is going to go right on top of this. You're not going to notice it, is what I'm getting at. So we'll go ahead and install it right there. I've done it already on the other side. We set up. And then when you put that lifeboat in there, it sits up just perfectly with no big deal. And the boat's going to sit on top of it. Let's see here. This is my mock-up one, and it's kind of ready to go. It's going to eat up that space. You're not going to really, no one's going to care. And I haven't checked. Maybe it did sit on the expansion joint. I don't really know. But anyway, this works out the way that we want. So now that that is done, we have a bunch of photo etch gates that need to go in place, and we have a whole bunch of cleats that need to get installed. So let's go ahead and do that next. All right, the next order of business, I believe, should be these bits. And they go in right there, right next to the stanchion, or the davit, right underneath the pulley. And I don't remember if I mentioned this or not before, the lifeboats could be lowered by hand, easy peasy, and you would have secured it to this bit, and then it would have ran up to the top here, and then just kind of like let it go down. But if you need to pull it up, you needed some pulley action, and I think that's what happened right here. So anyway, I would put these bits in next, and the reason being is it's easy to access right now where they go. like that, because then we're going to be putting up the railing, and the railing kind of goes like in front of it. It's all temporary stuff anyway, and it's just easier to worry about that now rather than later. So anyway, go ahead and we'll get all those in, and we'll do the next part. Okay, the next order of business are these rails, and they just kind of go in at like a diagonal to the davit, which is kind of why I wanted to have the bit installed first. And I'm just kind of going at an angle and eyeballing it here. They're temporary, they don't have to be perfect, and then we'll touch them up later. But you just kind of drop them in like this, and you want to have the spots kind of figured out, and they're obviously super duper fragile, so this is why you want to get them in here now before we monkey with the boat. And this gives us a little bit of room to come in here, you know, if we want, and we can. I'm going to look into this. I think I'm going to run a line from here up to the top of the davit. I don't know if I'll go from here to the pulley and up. I'm going to try and get some more reference pictures and figure that out. But anyway, you got to do that next for all of these parts right here. And you just kind of work your way along towards the back. We might have to relocate this anchor here. I haven't made up my mind about that yet. Actually, no, I think that one will be okay. But we'll go ahead and put the rest of those in, and then, yeah, we'll see about some rigging here. Okay, so I've settled on basically a minimum amount of rigging that will look good for the ship. So my go-to stuff is Easy Line, and I do recommend using this. I bought this 100 feet, oh man, maybe 10 years ago, and I still have a lot left, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure you could find it on eBay. It has two drawbacks, though. One, I don't know if this will show up in the camera there. It might be a little thick for scale, but I don't know if you can see how it gets thin and wide. It's a very flat thread. So one side's super skinny and the other side's a little bit wider, so it's inconsistent. The other problem, and this says model railroad and airplanes, it's perfect for model railroads and airplanes that you keep inside because it's away from the sunlight. That's the drawback. This stuff will dry out and kind of evaporate and melt away in ultraviolet light. And my client told me that this ship will be prominently displayed in a room that has giant east-facing windows that gets plenty of sun in the morning. So that is why I've switched to this stuff. Unithread, 200 yards, made in Germany, black. This is exactly what I'm getting. This is for fly fishing. And the advantage to it is a little bit more scale thin. It's round all the way. It won't evaporate or dissolve in ultraviolet light. And you can attach it with CA glue. The drawback to it is a strong thread. It does not stretch, which is why Easy Line is easy and this is not. So I'm going to zoom in here. You can kind of see in the background what I've already done. So here's how we're going to kind of handle this situation. With a very small amount of CA glue, I'm going to touch the back side of this bit down here. Then I'll take my Easy Line, touch it to the, or not my Easy Line, sorry, my thread. I'm going to touch it to the back like that. And I'm just going to let it sit, and we're going to allow this CA glue to set up for a few minutes. And while that's happening, we'll go ahead and do the same thing. I know you can't see from the camera to the one on this side of that davit right there. We're going to take our line and we'll drop it in just like so. If you notice, I'm kind of using the pulley to lean up against, and I've decided to run it off the pulley and up. I just think for display purposes that makes more sense, even though it may not have necessarily been rigged that way. We'll just go like that. All right, and let's just let that set up for a minute. All right, once that's set, we'll put just a dot of CA glue here and a dot of CA glue right up on top here. Go ahead and grab your line, and I want a little bit of tension down there. Now I'm going to pull it tight up and away. I just want it to rest on the davit, because the davit, just like that, there you go. The davit is flexible. Unfortunately, it's not an actual piece of real steel. And so, yeah, you just want it resting on here. And you're going to let this glue dry for a few minutes. And I'll show you how to trim it. Okay, now we need to cut this off. And so I have a new razor, or a new blade of my knife. I'm just going to go like that with it. That's super, super important. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you'll pull on it and you'll have issues. We have to do the other one next to it, which I'll take care of in a second. And then I'm going to stop because I want to get the boat in here, and then I'll run a line from one to the other straight across the top. This was some type of grab line. I'm not sure for the crew. I have to read the data again. I know they left extra rope down here so that the idea is once the ship's in the water, they could tie it off and shimmy on down, get in the boats themselves, and then cut the line loose. Unfortunately, in Titanic's case, I don't think that actually worked out. All right, pressing on here. Okay, so gonna need a lifeboat. Go ahead and cut them out, the resin. If this is the K lifeboat, do the best job that you can. Clean it up nicely, and then I gave it a wash in rubbing alcohol. And then this is Tamiya white primer. I'll go ahead and get this primed up. You could prime the whole thing first with metal etch. Might help you a little bit, but I think that rubbing alcohol and going straight to this primer will work given how big this piece is. So you want to go ahead and get your pieces all primed up, and then we'll move on to the next painting phase. All right, so got our white on. That's great. To make this next part of painting kind of easier, what we want to do is focus on the layers that make sense. So we've already got our base coat on of white and top. If you look closely here, you could see that there's a whale line that goes right around here. I guess, I don't know if whale is the right word. The whale might be down here. But anyway, you've got this beam that runs along the top. On Titanic, that was painted or stained mahogany color. Raised, you can see the lashing, and then on top of that, you have your tarp. It makes sense to now paint right in here and get our mahogany color on. Now you can mask down below if you want to, or just carefully paint along here. But basically, what I want to do at this point is get my color on in the lower area where it's recessed, because it's easier at this point, well, after this, to paint the raised area, leave everything underneath intact, if that makes any sense. So we'll get the brown on, then we'll come back and we'll do the tarp over the top. If I need to touch up any of the white along the way because I'm being lazy and not masking it off, I can, because it's just a straight line below that edge. But we're just going to try and get this negative space filled in, and we're not too worried about the type of job that we're going to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so here's the part all painted up. It's fine. So now we're going to go to my Life Color Camouflage Surrey US Navy Pale Gray 5P. This is the color that my client has chosen for the canvas cover on top. So this stuff goes on thin if you're going to use a brush, at least this color is, and you need to make a whole bunch of really light passes, which is what I'll do. But let's see if we can do this here. You could come in and make a thicker pass right over the top of where the canvas comes along the edge. And again, this is just the raised surface to the canvas cover we saw earlier. And so now we're coming over the edge and we're covering up that part of the whale. I'm going to call it the whale. And it looks convincing, as you can see right there. And so you might have to do a couple of coats depending on how thin your paint goes down with the brown, but I think you can see right here it's going over it just fine. No trouble. Just like that. And it looks good. So then, you know, you got to do a bunch of coats here. So this is what I do. I brush this stuff on really thin, kind of one way, and then I will come back and run my brush the opposite way for the next coat, and I'll end up going like that for the third coat in the direction of kind of the stretched canvas marks that are on here. And what you'll end up with is a nice looking cover when you're all done. This takes about 3 coats, but I wanted you to see how to get that edge there that looks nice, right? And if we back up to like normal person viewing distance, it looks even nicer, which is really important and something I referenced in last Shop Talks video. All right, so press on. Let me go ahead and get that paint up. We'll come back for the next step. Okay, now that we're back, here's our little lifeboat, pretty much ready to go. So I have German Panzer Sandgrau by Life Color, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and keep it in focus and show you what I'm going to do here is touch these ropes. And I'm just going to put a tiny little bit on each one of these, and this is definitely something that you should not fret over. It's really like an implied thing, right? If you could just get that color on, and I would, maybe let your paint thicken up a little bit so it's a little bit thicker, so it definitely goes on when you touch it. We're just trying to imply that there's a little lash right there. And that's it. We'll just move along like this. You do that on all sides. And this is, I think at this point is kind of way over the top in terms of how well you're going to see this. It's more like if you get really close to look at the boat that you might see it. Okay, so that is it. And then at this point, you have what I would call a very, very respectable, ready to go lifeboat. But there are a couple of extra things you can do. But I would not fault anyone at this point for just going ahead and installing this on the model. What we do have in Photo Etch are grab handles that I've already pre-painted. Basically, they're little loops that go along the edge of the lifeboat. And the idea there is you're in the water, swimming towards your lifeboat. Maybe you can't fit in the lifeboat. You can hang on to these things, pull yourself into the boat, or just stay floating, right? So let's go ahead and pull those out. So I've got a few right here painted up black. This is it. What I'm going to do is cut them loose, and then I'm going to tape them into position with some tape before gluing them. Okay, I'm going to try and do this on camera. So while I'm waiting for the paint to dry on the Photo Etch, the kit comes with some decals, and I have another decal, like third-party company that I bought decals from. I'm not gonna. I found them on eBay. I think they've had I've had mixed results with the decals themselves. Like this one needs a little soak. So like how they, like the carrier film on this one's all attached to everything, so you got to trim it out. But anyway, we can go ahead and smush this RMS Titanic Liverpool decal up in the corner, which was on all of the lifeboats. We'll just put up there like that. Do a little squish of the cotton swab and let that set up. I'm sorry that's not in focus there. There you go. So you can see that. And then we'll stick the other one on real quick. This one actually says Liverpool on it. The other one says RMS Titanic in the back, which is nice. Finger out of the way. So, you know, you got your little decal there. You get an idea of what this looks like, which I think is kind of a nice little addition right there, right? Yeah, let's press on here to the next step. Okay, quick little change. So I swapped out the decals. The decals that you saw just a moment ago are the ones from the kit. And they're very nice, they're just out of scale. You could read them and they're just too big. I put them on, I thought, man, they looked a little ridiculous. So I have this, and they actually weren't very good. The carrier film wasn't cut out around each of the individual decals. So I have this third-party decal set. It's numbered 03719. I found this on eBay. A gentleman was making them. I mixed results with the scaling and everything, but they actually have these decals the correct size, and the carrier film's trimmed out around each one, so they went on and applied nicely, and they're right to scale. You can't read that it says Liverpool and RMS Titanic, but it's fine. So anyway, I just thought I would show this because that is now to scale and looks good. So now we need to apply our rope on the side, or grab rope. So let's do that. Okay, so back in action. This is our little piece of photo etch. I painted it up with a brush on the sprue. I cut it off, and it naturally bends this way with its springiness. And so you're going to want to take advantage of that. So we're going to go ahead and affix it with the tops of the lashes. Basically, I'm going to put them right underneath this edge of the whale right here. And as you can see, I've got some scrap pieces of tape right here. The way you want to do this is take this tape and attach it to the top of the lifeboat here, here, and here, with a little room hanging out in either end. And then you start fixing the rope in place with the tape, and then coming back with CA glue. Let's demonstrate that. Alright, here's my 3 pieces of tape. They're used tape because you don't want anything sticking too aggressively to the photo etch. You'll have trouble later, and I'm going to try my best here to show this. So it's not going to lay perfect right away, and that's alright. Just pick an end. I'm going to start up here, and I basically want to be able to get those loops right there in the right spot, or real close to it, like that. We're a little low. Oh, there we go. Actually not too shabby. Right, like that. And stick our tape down. And you can see through the tape to see if you screwed up or not. That actually looks really good to me. I'm surprised. Move it down just a little bit. Pull that piece of tape down. Then at the end here, obviously it's all up in the air, so just push it down a little bit. that. There we go. I think that's pretty good. Just like so. All right, now get your CA glue. I just make a little pile of it. Grab a little bit with a toothpick. Of course, my battery's dying here, but you're going to start dabbing right along these exposed edges here. And just let it set up like that. Okay? Let me change the battery here in the camera. I'll get back to you. But we're going to keep doing that. Okay, battery's changed. I've put glue in all in the spots where there's not tape. And now we have the tricky hard part. Because the area under the tape has not been glued, which is why you got to peel it off very slowly, and why I recommend you use tape that's not super sticky or lost a little bit of tack. We'll come back here before you forget where you were and apply just a dab of CA glue to each of those positions. I put CA glue right here and right here, right up next to my rope, in an effort to secure it so that when I peel my tape back, less likely to have trouble with it. I'll just put a little here, put a little here. That's fine. There we go. You can see it wants to move a little bit. Dab like that. And that's it. So there we go. There's one 30-foot lifeboat ready to go. And obviously everything you do to one side, you have to do to the other side as well. Pick the side that looks the nicest. Have that outboard on your ship. All right, let's go ahead and get this one mounted in place. Okay, here's our blank spot. I'm just going to go ahead and let it ride here while we finish up installing our last little details.
Titanic had 20 open boats or lifeboats at her disposal. While there is a lot of information about them available to researchers, there are no known surviving plans. It is most likely that these boats were built by eye, with a mere midship mold as a reference. The 14 30-foot boats had a capacity of 65 persons, while the two 25 emergency cutters could only hold 33 people each. The 4 collapsible boats would carry 40 apiece if properly deployed. There was enough room for a little over half of Titanic's passengers and crew. Each boat's oars were made from straight-grained ash with copper-tipped blades. They were leather-bound by the crutches or thole pins. The 30-foot boats had 10 oars each. The davits allowed for the lowering of each lifeboat by hand. Lines had to be wrapped around bits to keep the weight of each boat manageable. But with a small crew of deckhands, the boats were easily lowered. However, they had to be sure to lower each end at the same rate. This proved difficult to manage during the sinking. If a boat was to be recovered, one of the emergency cutters, for example, an electric winch was used on the boat deck. Prior to setting sail, Titanic's 30-foot lifeboats had been tested with the weight of 70 men on board. They performed admirably. However, on that fateful night, some were launched with as few as 40 souls on board. The deck crews were afraid if they tried to load more passengers, that the boats would break under the weight. An alternative option would have been to load more passengers once the boats were safely in the water. During testimony given after sinking, it was agreed that this would have been possible. However, none of the boats returned to Titanic once deployed.
All right, I think that just about wraps it up. That is one of many lifeboats that we still have to install. Obviously not the one to the left there, the 26 footers, but Yeah, so zoomed in here, I think you can see all of our little detail finally paid off, right? We've got our chains that are supposed to hold the thing down. We've got our grab lines. You even can see, make out the little tan lines that we put on to hold the canvas cover on top. We've got our little line across the top here. And then our pulleys, which is photo etched. So this is the KA photo etch. I've noticed on everyone's who's done this that there's slack. There's too much distance there for the pulleys, I think. I'm going to think about this a little bit and decide how to proceed forward with that. It might just be the best that we could do. We might be able to take that slack out. I'm not sure, but I think right now it looks nice. And also you can see our little lashings. I'm pleased with the way that this looks. And again, you guys are zoomed in close. If you're watching on a giant TV, everything's astronomical and huge. If we zoom all the way back out, it looks really good. And then if we take a step even further back from the ship, so that you can look at it kind of how the casual observer would see things, I think it looks really nice. We've got several more to go and little things like that. But anyway, that's it. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you have a Merry Christmas and a good holiday season here. And Happy New Year if we don't get to see you again before 2023. All right, that's it for now. We'll see you later.